So last episode, we talked about the stigma of as husbands getting help and walking through counseling and what things might present a problem and why we wouldn't just jump in wholeheartedly. This week, we're just going to follow up with that on the benefits of talking to someone and making space for that. So when you think, Brian, of benefits off top of talking to a counselor, what jumps out at you or what pops in your mind?
The first thing that jumps in my mind is being able to communicate better, right? For me, that had been a struggle, still is to this day, but I certainly have better tools now that help me express what I'm thinking. Um, you know, just so I don't want to say so I'm more clear, um, but more or less for me, it's just so I don't get stuck in my own head. You know, thinking about, well, how is this going to be perceived? How is this going to come off? How, is she going to get mad if I say this? And right. Um, it helped me understand that my marriage is supposed to be a safe place. My marriage is the place where I'm supposed to be able to say what I want to say. Right.
Yeah.
And obviously I have to be mindful not to be hurtful. Right.
Mhm.
Um, but as I think my wife said years ago, um, it's like you're allowed to have feelings, right? And
Right.
like and I think she was defending her position. She was like, "I'm allowed to have feelings, right? Like you can't tell me how to feel. So
Hmm.
I'm gonna say what I'm gonna say, and it's just how I feel." And it took me a while to get that, but yeah, that's number one for me is ability to communicate.
Yeah. I mean, same thing for me. That was just like the top one is being able to have a healthy dialogue with my partner. Like
Mm,
that's what counseling has helped. That's what studying about counseling for me has helped as well. Like realizing the value of that. And that is really the foundation of any healthy relationship. And having tools to communicate is wonderful. Um, yeah, any what's aspect of communication that you think is important or counseling has helped you, kind of work through?
Um, well, like you said, listening is major. I think with the sales background I have, I've been able to develop that part.
Hmm.
I don't think that part was ever really weak. Um, but as far as an aspect being important, that is definitely one that needs to be developed in, I would say, probably most people. Um, I don't know if I told this story on the podcast last week or not. I know I said it to you. I don't know if I said it on the podcast. The kid that was asking me about having arguments with his girlfriend, and I told him to take notes.
I don't remember if you you said it on the pod or not, but
But either way, like that's even before I got into sales. That's where I started to practice. Um, at the time, I was dating someone who loved to argue and would drop multiple points on me all at once, and did this tactically so I couldn't keep up with the argument,
ooh.
right? And I'm like, I got you. I'm gonna start taking notes. So I started taking notes, and then I was effectively able to respond to everything that was thrown at me.
No, that's a good takeaway, even if you said it last week. Just different ways to to listen.
Mhm.
And I think for me and a lot of guys I talk to is listening just to listen, not trying to fix, not trying to come with a solution. And a good counselor will help you walk through the importance of that so you can see the value of not trying to fix, because intrinsically, and this is not just guys, but people, when they hear something and there may be a flaw or there may be an issue, we want to add value to the conversation by thinking of a way to help this person that we love get
Right.
through it. Um, but a lot of times our wives don't need that help. Most of the times they already have a solution. They're just wanting to tell you. And, you know, we can figure out that that's valuable within ourselves, but how do we work through it to see that there's more value in just listening than trying to come to a solution. And I think, talking to someone with experience helps with that, um, as well. I would say, unless you're going to say something after that.
Well, I was going to ask you on point, right? What's a good way? Um, Trying not to get too off topic here, but what's a good way if you feel that your wife does actually need help to broach that?
I would say the easiest way to make sure you're listening to listen, but also come with a solution, is circle back later. Like, let her have that conversation, have that with her, the empathetic, like, I hear what you're saying. Sorry you had to go through that. Wow, that was crazy, like that type of thing. And
Yeah.
then maybe an hour later or later in the evening or later in the day, whenever, circle back, um, with the solution aspect of it. So that way that space that she needs for you to listen is just what it is.
Hmm.
But you can also, if you think she really needs help or hasn't come up with a solution, and you could just say, hey, we had this conversation, blah, blah, blah. Like, did you, figure that out? Or did you come to a solution? Or like, what are your thoughts on that? And then she can say yes, no, whatever. And then you can say, well, I was thinking, over the past couple, whatever, like, have you tried this? Or what do you think about this idea?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like that. Um, and I also like being more direct as well. But this is gonna play out to whatever your personality type is.
Hmm.
So for me, up front, I might say, right? Am I listening or am I helping?
No,
Right?
that's
Just
valuable. Yeah.
that it's what's my role here right now? What do you need from me is basically what I'm saying. Um, yeah, just because I like to know up front.
No, I mean, that's valid. And that's a communication tool. Like,
Yeah.
what's my role here? Like, what do you need me to be? That's perfect.
Yeah.
And that's something that you can learn, or if it makes you uncomfortable, also figure out by trying and all that, to be like, okay, well, that's not really my personality, but it's so valuable to know
Yeah.
what is my role here in this conversation.
Yeah.
And that helps for beyond your wife, right?
Right.
Beyond your partner, like, okay, where in your other relationships, work relationships, just friendships, like, what am I doing here? And that way, that leaves less space for, assumptions,
Hmm.
people assuming that you are the listener or you are the helper, and you don't know that which one you are.
Right.
And you can come with what they need, and that makes you a valuable friend.
Yeah. And I think it helps improve future conversations as well.
Yep.
Because if that's the trend, then your wife then might lead with, "Hey, I just need you to hear me out on this," and then she can go, and you already know, like, what the deal is, or, "Hey, I need your help with something."
Hmm.
So yeah, I like that.
Yeah. I would say for me, one of the benefits of, um, counseling was in communication, is identifying, like, the emotions that I have, but also knowing that I have the ability to displace my emotions on or place them onto my wife when it's
Mm.
really a situation. So, um, if I stub my toe, right, and she walks in the room and I let her have it because I'm angry that and hurt because my toe is hurt, like that's a displacement of emotion. So, and we have the ability to do that as often as we feel an emotion, right? To
Right.
displace it and put it on someone. So, that is a benefit of talking to someone, figuring out that that even happens and how to stop it and realize I'm upset with this thing, not at my wife. Or even if it's something that she did, I'm upset with the action. I'm not, it's not her that I'm really mad at, if that makes sense. Um, but then also differentiating, like, no, I'm mad at her, and I got to work through it and
Yeah.
be kind and be loving and all that. So, you know, talking to someone helps me communicate better, in a more direct, kinder manner,
Yeah.
than before I even knew that counseling was a thing that was valuable.
You got me thinking as well. There's actually kindness in being able to let your spouse know that you're angry with them and not just holding it and giving them all the signs that you're angry, but not communicating that to them so that you can get to a resolution,
Hmm.
right? Because I've been there far too often, right? I'm just like, I'm just gonna bury this, I'll get over it, it'll be fine, and then we can move on. But your wife has known you for far too long. She can read you like a book, and she already knows that you're mad about something. And rather than letting her know that it's either her or something else, uh, it's now she has to stew on what's going on, and she ends up getting mad at you.
Right. Yeah, it can all be avoided.
Yes. Oh man.
Yeah, so I think as far as communication goes, like there's so many other things that you can become better at. Um, that's beneficial if you're getting the tools from a counselor or professional. So, um, yeah. What is another benefit that you um would say of talking to a professional?
Um, Seeing each other's perspectives, right? Um, for me, it it's strange because until you're in a relationship, more times than not, I don't feel like you necessarily feel like you need to consider other people's perspectives. And that might, I don't know, that might be overstepping a little bit, but I don't know, man. I feel like I was just living for me,
Hmm.
right? Like, obviously, other people have their perspectives, but they didn't necessarily affect me, right? And I think this helps with conflict resolution. Obviously, it helps with communication, right? It it helps with all things in your marriage. I mean, if you even just think about people having different styles of raising children, right?
Hmm.
Like you have to understand what your spouse's perspective is. Like for us, I was settled on having two children. Um, but I grew up in a two-child home with just one other sibling, and she grew up with two other siblings, a three-child home. Um, so most of her life, she probably thought like that's the ideal family. You know what I mean? I don't know, man. It's you want to help me out here?
Yeah, I mean, no, other perspectives again, I feel like those things that you learn talking to professional help you in your marriage, but also beyond, right?
Mhm.
Because it brings up things that you have to address within your marriage, but it just makes you a better person once you do. I think on a deep level, as far as caring about someone else's perspectives, I feel what you're saying, right? Because there are other perspectives out there, but your spouse's perspective, like you have to care about. Like if you're a human person that wants a good marriage, like it forces you to like, oh, like let me sit and think about like what would it feel like if I heard this, or if what is her day like? What are the things that she does?
Mhm.
That is out of the norm of what I do, um, or how long does she deal with certain things, right? Like for me, traditionally, bedtime, I have a short part to play in bedtime, right? I
Mm.
might do the story, I'll do prayer, whatever. But my wife, her portion of bedtime is basically like my wife's counselor, like or my daughter's counselor. Like she'll come in and she'll just spew out her day, anything she did wrong, blah blah blah. So I'm like, oh, like it's about to be bedtime. Like we hit all these things. She's about to be asleep, and then my wife will come and she's like, oh, can I talk to mommy now? And then it's like this full like I'm thinking she's about to fall asleep. She wakes up, she's like blah 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 blah. I hear them, I'm like, oh my gosh, like, and then Crystal come back, man, this is what happened, and this is what she's doing. So I'm like, yo, like, I'm so glad she goes to you for that because I'm not equipped, right? So there's just these little things. And that's something as small as bedtime, but like it's something different that my wife has to deal with. Um, on top of all the other things. Um, and something that we do when we're doing our coaching and counseling is have people write down the things that they do for like a day, and then or like a week, and then have each other swap roles, even if it's like household things or grocery shopping or whatever. Like just flip it for a week and see how that is. And obviously those things change as you further along in marriage, but at least it can be an eye-opening experience. So okay, so this is what my spouse does, when not at work. These are all the not work things that they take care of for us. So there's that perspective when you go back to your traditional roles between you and your spouse. You understand what they're going through, um, and that in itself is eye-opening. And I know we've talked about it a bunch on this podcast, like you just saying I had to look, what was Katie doing, what was her perspective like, and see how she was. And it just makes you more empathetic,
Mhm.
and it allows you to realize like the world does not see everything through my eyes like I see it.
Right. Right. Yeah, that's funny, man. I don't think that it would even be possible for us to switch. And that's not to say she can't handle like what I do or vice versa. I just mean like scheduling wise, I wouldn't be able to do it. Like with the responsibilities I have, I legitimately could not do what she does. So, and you know, that makes me have to be empathetic to her plight because what that also means is for the time being, that all has to rest on her shoulders.
Hmm. Yeah.
And that's think about.
Yeah. And I think lastly, I guess on this is, even if there's like you said, it helps with conflict resolution. But if you bring something to the professional and say, hey, this is blah, 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 even if you want to go off on about it, and they'll just sit there and they'll be like, what did you think about this? Or how do you think that felt with, or they'll just give a different, like, just even their perspective is different than the one that you have. And it may be something you didn't even think about, but it's beneficial to think about, if that makes sense. You just didn't think about it because that's not where you were. And it's most of the time very helpful. I'll say on my end, it's very helpful to hear that. So, yeah.
Yeah.
um, but yeah, rolling in next, I would say, talking about other perspective, but those coping skills for things that happen in life,
Mhm.
right? I think the professional will help you in those times that you don't see coming, right? Times of high stress, um, times of high emotions, life changes, good or bad, right? From um, buying a new house, having a new kid, um, dealing with loss and grief. Um, those things are something a professional can help you help pull out different feelings that you may have and how to cope with them, or just the stress of all those things. Because you always have stress. It's just kind of whether it's like positive or negatively affecting you, right? Because buying a house is cool, but it's super stressful trying to get everything together. Having a child is amazing, but it's super stressful trying to figure out those things. And then obviously job loss doesn't feel good. Losing a family member, very rough. Um, so a professional can just help you be someone to talk to that's not feeling the weight of it as your spouse is, right? Because your spouse is also feeling the weight of what you're going, because you're going through it together. um, but the professional has a different um, aspect and can again help you see from a different perspective, and resolve kind of those and to cope with kind of those things. Do you have any thoughts on those?
Yeah, I was thinking conversely, the counselor could also teach you better tools to be able to lean on each other, right? Because the
Mhm.
counselor is going to be there.
Right.
Uh, and, that's what your wife's for, what your husband's for. Um, and that is because that's something like I've shared on the podcast that I had to learn to do, right? I was so used to just either burying stuff or um, just being the person with the broad shoulders who
Hmm.
carried everything, right? And I mean that honestly has gone back to me being a little kid, right? Growing up in a single parent home, I I carried far more weight of that house than I should have.
Hmm.
And it's not that I was necessarily told to or expected to. I would just happen to see my mom hurting in certain areas or whatever. Excuse me. And I kind of just took it upon myself. And I probably that probably happens to a lot of young boys that grow up in that scenario, right? They
Hmm.
man of the house. I would say there are probably some single women out there, single moms out there who unintentionally put that weight on, their well, I would say probably sons and daughters
Hmm.
because they need the help, but they're looking for it in the wrong
Yeah.
place.
Right. Right.
Um, but yeah, going back to learning those coping skills um, and learning to communicate those with each other without, I think for me, without expectation, right? I think that's I think that's what I'm trying to say, right? It's if I'm trying to explain it, I think it goes back to what we were talking about before, like not being a solver, right?
Hmm.
So if I'm sharing this problem with you, I don't necessarily expect you to fix it for me,
Hmm.
right? The part of the solution is just being able to get this off my chest.
Mm.
So I hope I've explained that well.
No, that makes sense. I never thought about it that way, but that's so valuable, right? Part of the solution. And I think that even helps me, like now bringing this tool that you just dropped, this nugget that you just dropped in, like when, even when it comes to circling back to communication, am I here to listen or am I here to help?
Mhm.
Like listening is helping.
Right.
So that helps me see the value of not coming up with a solution. So that's amazing. Life-changing moment here on the pod. Awesome. Is there anything else to say on coping skills or conflict resolution?
um, no, I think I'm
Okay,
good on that.
good. Oh, I will say this. Conflict resolution, when you guys have issues, you learn how to, as a professional, you learn how to talk to each other amicably and with kindness, and tools like take notes or whatever else would help you guys work through it or help you as a husband um, be better in those situations. That one kind of goes without saying, but I wanted to say it to be clear.
Right, right.
Um, yeah, so we're up kind of against the time on this, but um, I know we did want to talk about just personal growth and self-awareness.
Mhm.
So was there anything specific you wanted to say about that area and how that benefits us as husbands when talking to a professional?
First thing that jumps in my mind is leaving space for each other to grow, um, together and apart, right? I think speaking with a counselor can, going back to perspectives, uh, help you see the need for that within each other, um, and help you progress through that, right? Um, and I think we've spoken about this on the pod before, you know, because there are times where you're not both going to be able to do this at the same time. So
Hmm.
being through the process of, hey, I'm going to need this time to do this. Once I complete that, hey, then you can have this time to do that, or vice versa. Um, so yeah, for me, that's the main thing is being able to understand and allow space for each other to grow, like I said, together or apart. And what I mean by together or apart is together, right? Like we've said before, your wife may have to have a little more understanding as you're learning to be the man, husband, and father that she wants you to be or needs you to be, right? And then apart, you might be talking about, self-improvement to you know, to advance your career or something along those lines. But
Hmm.
just so I was a little more clear on what I was getting at.
No, that's that's perfect. Um, yeah, I think the thing I would say is talking through self-awareness particularly is being okay with um, you seeing weaknesses or growth areas in yourself and your wife pointing those areas out to you, and you
Woo!
being okay with receiving that data, right? All right, I'm
Yeah.
receiving this information. How am I better at receiving this information? Because obviously we are not perfect as people, as husbands. Our wives live with us every day, and they see us and they see where we struggle, what we need improvement on, um, and they let us know.
Mm.
And where you are in your marriage kind of determines how they let us know, whether it's in a respectful manner that we have no choice but to receive graciously, or if it comes up in conflict, in an argument, in a way that could be rude, even if it's in jest, in a joking fashion, whatever the dynamic of your marriage is, how it comes up. But you have to be able to gain the truth of that and be able to figure out how to get better.
Mhm.
Um, and, talking to a professional will definitely give you tools to do that.
Yeah, that's good, man. That's oof. That was a touchy subject for me, receiving criticism, right? Um, and learning not to receive it as an attack,
Mm, yeah.
you know? And that largely came from me with a mindset that I needed to improve, right? And just being willing to understand that, I don't only need to improve in the areas that I see.
Yes. Wow, that's big one.
Yeah. Uh,
Oh, wow.
so now, and even to this day, like, she'll say, "Hey, I need you to work on doing a certain thing." Um, in the past, I may have seen that as a criticism rather than just the words that they were. Like, "Hey,
Hmm.
can you get this done?" You feel me? Um, but yeah, so that one hits hard.
Yeah. But yeah, working through that with a professional is definitely helpful. Um, yeah, I mean, so we're right up at time now. So is there anything else you want to say uh, as far as the benefits of talking to a professional?
No, I think I'm good. I think we discussed these at length, for lack of better words.
Yeah, for sure. I think that we can, I mean, it was helpful for me even to to realize those benefits and to really wrap some words around what I was thinking about them and how they benefit. So I hope that was helpful and beneficial for whoever listening.
Same.